else, but I would
Well,
love
the
to
story
know
I
what,
heard on Andon, and this is probably a culmination of a couple of different stories, but
sure.
without getting too far off on the whole loom and the jidoka built into the loom, right? Where if a thread breaks, other ones kept going. They put in the lever, right, that stopped it. So that
Right.
was quality built in.
But somebody didn't have to speak up. That was like mechanical.
That was mechanical. But then when they sold that to Pratt Whitney and all that, got the money. So then the other guy takes the profits and builds cars. Then they go into the big three or whatever Ford plants and see the assembly line. But the assembly line was similar to the loom without the jidoka, where if there was a problem, it kept going, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then the Andon was the jidoka to put in the assembly line, right? To take place. Like you said, you couldn't have a mechanical thing on each process.
Yeah.
And then I also heard that, one of their trips to the U.S., they went through San Francisco and rode on the cable car. And unlike a train that had scheduled stops, anybody could pull that cable and get off whenever they wanted to.
Yes.
And so that was, I was told, was the origin of the cord, the rope or whatever put on there, so that anybody could do it at any time and not have to wait for the scheduled stop.
That makes complete sense, because you look at it's tacked up at certain points and it hangs down.
Yeah. It was
so
that's what was what I was heard. But again, it's this cultural leadership, because I've had lots of places put in ropes or put in buttons, but if the leadership is that top down or whatever, then it's not. If our heads are going to roll, then I'm not pulling them, right?
Right. So I'm guessing the jidoka concept was already there. So I'm guessing there was this cultural intention that led to the cord. Like, this cord is going to be the manifestation of how we have people point out problems, and if it comes to it, the line stops
for the assembly line. Yeah.
For assembly.
Yeah. And there's lots of writings right up Numi and that whole thing with that Andon was the difference maker.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And you're talking about, thousands of times a day. There's a news story. I'll put a link in the show notes. It was from the BBC, but they were writing about a Ford truck plant in Dearborn, Michigan. It was about 15 years ago. And the story talks about how, like, they had copied the tool. They had all the equipment. You buy it from a vendor. You install all the Andon cords. And the article talked about, compared to Toyota, the cord was being pulled a couple times a week.
Yeah, a couple times a week.
And I'm guessing that was like maintenance, testing.
Right.
Sure. They had a checklist. They had standard work of go and test the Andon cord, but it wasn't being pulled. And there was no implication in the article, thankfully, that the Ford employees didn't care as much as the Toyota employees. That was part of Ford's cultural journey.
Yeah, and it's the leadership behaviors.
Yeah.
I had another story with up in Canada. I visited this furniture company, office furniture, and they had a lean, like a servant leader. He didn't even know about Toyota and TPS, and we were telling him. And his message was, raise your hand. That was his standard, raise your hand. And so then I go back a quarter later, whatever, they show me all this improvement in productivity, drops of defects. And we're looking out the second floor window there, and he's like, see it, they're raising their hand. I'm like, I can't believe this. I want to go talk to somebody right on the floor. So I picked this toughest looking dude I could find. And it was French, Quebec. And I'm like, tell me about this pulling the cord. And the translator said, he thought it was a bunch of expletives, or, BS or whatever. And, but he said, then somebody pulled it and they showed up, and they were there asking, how can I help you? And asking, and then working on the problem. And so more of us started pulling it. And then there was more pulls than the leadership. So then, you know what they did? He says, they brought the CI team down to the floor, and then the CI team would be out there when we raised our hand, also helping. And then, then we even had more people raising their hand. Then they brought the engineers down to the floor. They would jump in when they got that. And then Patrick was the lead guy. Patrick's down here. Patrick's in on a Saturday when we're raising our hand. He's there answering and seeing how he can help. I'm like, man, that's impressive. I've said, but I just saw the productivity graph where you're building like 3 times the amount of cabinets. and these are union guys, by the way, as well. You're building 3 times the amount of cabinets you were 6 months ago or whatever. Tell me about
Wow.
that.
Wow.
You liking that? And he said, we love it. He said, we're kicking the tails off of the other plants.
Yeah.
And we and he's using the term we. And
Yeah.
like, we're loving this. We're kicking their butts. And I'm like, I wish I'd been taping you on this one.
Right.
So
But there's
it's not the equipment. It's not the bell, the whistle. It's the leadership behavior, right?
yeah.